Good morning and welcome to America's spaceport here in Florida. This is a live look at Space Launch Complex 40 at the Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, where Crew 9 is in the process of suiting up for their mission. Crew 9 is a continuation of regular crewed flights from U.S. soil to station as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. The mission today is a new configuration for NASA's Commercial Crew Program as we go back into the suit-up room. We are flying one commander and one mission specialist, a crew of 2 instead of a crew of 4 as originally planned. Now, the reason is to use those 2 empty seats to return astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. They flew up to the ISS in June, but remained on the International Space Station to prioritize their safe return. Meanwhile, their Starliner spacecraft, which had technical issues during a test flight, returned to Earth uncrewed earlier this month and returned successfully. And we'll have more on that in just a bit. Today, the crew's ride to space is the Dragon Freedom spacecraft, its 4th flight to space. As you look here at Commander Nick Hague, I want to talk a little bit about him. U.S. Space Force Colonel Nick Hague is your Crew 9 commander. He was selected by NASA as an astronaut in 2013. This will be his 2nd space flight to the International Space Station. In 2018, he and his Soyuz crewmate experienced a catastrophic rocket booster malfunction after launch. They were forced to abort, but landed safely. 5 months later, Hague launched on another Soyuz and served as flight engineer for expeditions 59 and 60, and of course, a safe mission to the ISS. He spent a total of 203 days in space and performed 3 spacewalks. The Kansas native is a test pilot and a distinguished graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Nick spent 5 months in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. He voluntarily transferred from the United States Air Force to the Space Force in 2021 and is an active colonel. His wife, Katie, is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel, and they have 2 sons. Nick is certainly ready for this role, a role, Zena, that you had trained for, but a switch was made. Let's talk a little bit now about his fellow crew member, Hague's fellow crew member, talking about Alexander Gorbanov. This is mission specialist Alexander Gorbanov's first time going to space. He studied engineering with qualifications in spacecraft and upper stages from the Moscow Aviation Institute. Gorbanov graduated from the military department with a specialty in operation and repair of aircraft, helicopters, and aircraft engines. Before his cosmonaut selection in 2018, he worked as an engineer for a rocket space corporation and helped support cargo spacecraft launches from the Baikonur Cosmodrome.
That's exactly right. It's great to see Alexander looking good in his suit today. He has been an incredible asset to the team, Crew 9. I'm so grateful that I got to spend the last 18 months training with him and with Nick. They are both flying today in roles that are slightly different than the ones they originally trained for, but they are both ready to step up.
And talk a little bit about that, Zena. Initially, he was trained as pilot. Now he's in the commander position, but he also has to cover some of the responsibilities of the pilot, right? Because Gorbanov is still mission specialist, though he's also upped his level of ability for this mission as well.
Yeah, certainly. It is an unusual circumstance. So the mindset for today is that Nick Hague is the commander, and we're referring to it as a single-seat commander. So he will be in charge of the vehicle, taking over the commander role. It's a step up, certainly, from the pilot role, but something that he's well trained to do. And the difference between transitioning from the pilot to the commander role is less of a difference than it would be to transition from mission specialist to pilot. And we simply did not have enough time to complete all of that training, although Alex is an incredible crewmate and a very capable cosmonaut. And so Alex will be flying in the seat that Nick was physically training in. Nick will be flying in the seat that I was physically training in. But they will both be sharing these duties. Alex will be backing up Nick in a lot of the duties, but Nick will be the commander of the spacecraft.
Zena, how long does it take for crews to train together for a launch, and what does that training entail?
Yeah, so as a crew, we are training for about 18 months together, and that training includes a lot of training in Hawthorne. As you see pictured here, this is Nick and Alex in Hawthorne, California, and we also have some simulators in Houston, Texas, training in the Dragon capsule itself. The large majority of our time is spent training for the International Space Station as opposed to our launch vehicle. But the launch vehicle is something that we don't train for until about the last 6 or 8 months of training before we get to the ISS. So it really takes a lot of work, a lot of practice, so that on launch day, everything is very familiar.
There they are coming out of the hatch.
That's exactly right.
Doing that training you're talking about.
Yep. This training pictured here is for an unassisted egress in case they landed somewhere and rescue forces weren't immediately available to help them out of the capsule. So something that we practice for but hope to never use.
Right.
But of course, as we know, it's always good to practice for unexpected situations.
And the red stuff, those are the life-preserving items.
That's right,
supplies,
yeah.
Like a raft. And
there's a
some
life
flotation.
raft on board the Dragon, exactly right.
The two astronauts who are not flying today but will technically become part of Crew 9 and Expedition 72 when Nick and Alexander arrive to the ISS are, of course, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. Butch Wilmore, he has flown on 3 missions, performed 4 spacewalks, and flown in 3 spacecraft, Shuttle, Soyuz, and Starliner. And Sunny, she has flown on 3 missions, performed 7 spacewalks, and also flown in 3 spacecraft, Shuttle, Soyuz, and Starliner. Starliner arrived to the International Space Station on its test flight. This happened back in June, and we have video of it. There it is. You can see here Sonny and Butch gliding into the ISS for the welcome ceremony. Sonny's, of course, pumped as she was dying to get back onto the station. But after experiencing some technical issues with Starliner, NASA extended Butch and Sonny's stay on the ISS by weeks so teams could perform in-space and ground testing along with holding agency meetings to review the data. During that time, the pair of astronauts conducted research and performed maintenance on the orbiting lab. But in early September, Starliner undocked without its crew from the ISS as a result of NASA's decision to prioritize astronaut safety over the test flight. And then roughly 6 hours after it pulled away from the International Space Station, as you can see here, just after midnight on September 7th, in this infrared video, you can see Starliner landing under parachutes at the White Sands Space Harbor in New Mexico. Successful touchdown there. Starliner performed a series of burns leading up to the successful touchdown back on Earth and, of course, brought that 3-month test flight to a conclusion. And here's what Sonny and Butch had to say.
I was so happy it got home with no problems. We saw it fly away, and then we all got up. The whole crew got up at 3 in the morning, and we had it up on our iPads watching it land.
It was wonderful that it made it back. And the fact that we weren't on it didn't even come into mind at all.
We're here with our friends. We've got a ride home. And, we're looking forward to the next couple months and doing a lot of stuff for the International Space Station.
So we're looking outside the operations and checkout building at T-minus 3 hours, 38 minutes, and counting. This is where family, friends, loved ones have gathered to say goodbye to their astronaut. And let me tell you, the license plate is ready for it, as is the SpaceX Teslas that will head out to the pad. Always a great little tradition that they do with a custom plate.
Yes, I love this tradition. All of the Teslas that have taken Dragon crews to their rocket have had a fun custom license from Haley Esparza, who just walked in front of the camera. She's the mastermind behind those license plates. I suspect this one is a Taylor Swift reference. Of personal items, much of which we tend to take up with gifts. Oh, here they come.
There they are. Nick Hague, commander of Crew 9, with his crewmate, Alexander Gorbanov.
It's a big moment. Family and friends seeing their crew members
This way to
their
space.
suit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they'll have a chance here to say a few words with those who are closest to them.
Standing at a distance, of course, because the astronauts are quarantined for 2 weeks prior to liftoff.
And their closest members of the family have been quarantining with them, but as we are actually getting ready to get on the rocket, we are taking all of the precautions possible.
And we are on the road. We are now passing Kennedy's iconic vehicle assembly building. As you see, as we pull out the shot here, this is where NASA will stack its Space Launch System rocket and Orion spacecraft for Artemis 2, sending 4 astronauts around the moon. It'll be the first crewed mission of NASA's Artemis campaign to establish a long-term presence on the lunar surface for science. And there you see it. What a beautiful shot of the VAB. And there you see at the bottom right the crew on their way. Fabulous.
My goodness, what perspective. Wow.
Oh, nice wave.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
For the surfers out there, boy, that was a sweet one. There you saw the MRAPs just off to the side. Those are the vehicles in case there were an emergency egress. They would use the emergency slide wire chute to get down there and get in those vehicles. But this is a wider shot of Slick 40.
It's a beautiful shot.
And there's some important differences between this crew tower. This elevator takes the crew all the way up to the level of the crew access arm, as opposed to at 39A, they have to actually go up a few flight of stairs.
That's exactly right, which is no easy feat when you're in a suit like this. So quite nice to just go all the way direct in your elevator.
Yeah. With phenomenal views to either side of them, walking confidently and certainly anticipating these next few moments where they'll get into the spacecraft and get seated and strapped in. And we've got one already in the seat. Alexander Gorbanov taking his spot in what is typically the pilot's seat, but as the mission specialist in a crew of 2, he'll be sitting there right next to Nick Hague, who now takes his or kind of falls into it.
Yeah, so this is that was really funny to watch, actually, Nick, because he is used to training.
Crew have ingressed the capsule.
Used to training in seat number 3, so the seat that Alex is sitting in. You saw Nick lean to the right. He's used to dodging location 8, where the displays are, to the right to get around it.
Now that we are in countdown, the flight computer on Dragon will switch to countdown mode, and we've also heard the flight termination system is armed.
Go for launch.
Freedom is go for launch.
That's our final go for launch. SpaceX reporting go and the crew reporting go.
30 seconds.
Standing by for the first launch of humans from Space Launch Complex 40.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Ignition full power. And liftoff. Crew 9. Go SpaceX. Go Falcon. Go NASA.
Liftoff of Crew 9 now soaring to the International Space Station.
Stage 1 Alpha.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal. Copy 1 Alpha.
Those 9 Merlin engines now providing 1.7 million pounds of thrust, propelling Falcon 9 and Crew 9 and continuing to get good calls from teams here on the ground.
Of course, these incredible views mean we are just a little bit past 30 minutes or 30 seconds into our 9th rotational crew mission.
Power telemetry nominal.
On board Dragon and Falcon 9 with good callouts from mission control that everything is looking good. With that, stage 1 is throttling down to pass through max Q, which is the period of maximum dynamic pressure on Falcon 9 during ascent.
Max Q.
Confirmation of max Q.
Vehicle is supersonic.
And that Falcon 9 is now traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Stage 1 throttle up.
Stage 1 Bravo.
Copy 1 Bravo.
That call out for 1 Bravo means we're in the second and final abort mode for the first stage and continuing to get good performance.
And vac chill is underway.
Crew is pulling just over 2 Gs at this point. Next up, we heard the engine chill on the second stage MVAC engine has begun, and then we will have MECO, or main engine cutoff, where the 9 engines on the first stage will cut off ahead of the first and the second stages, and then will separate from one another. Then that single Merlin vacuum engine on the second stage will ignite and continue to carry Crew 9 to orbit while the first stage begins its journey back to Earth. Two minutes in, and the crew is now traveling over 2,600 miles per hour.
Stage 1 is throttling down.
Confirmation there from Mission Control that stage 1 is throttling down as we prepare for main engine cutoff, followed shortly thereafter by stage separation and second engine start 1. Getting our first tracking shots of the booster on its way back to Earth. Again, we are tracking the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen and MVAC up in space on the right.
Stage 2, FTX has based. Dragon SpaceX, Dragon separation confirmed.
There.
And Freedom copies, good separation.
There you heard from Mission Control. Both
Dragon, Chief Engineer on Countdown 1. Nick, Alex, on behalf of the entire team, we thank you for flying with Falcon 9 today and wish you a great mission.
incredible words from our commander and great views of Dragon up in orbit on your screen right now.
It's been about 14 minutes and 30 seconds since